Hi, my name is Kate Penwan Thompson, and today on Adoption Talks, we're going to talk about how loss factors into adoption. I want to talk about three sides of loss: the loss to the birth family and birth parents, and the loss to the child, and also how to deal with those feelings of loss that your child has. While we're in the moments of ecstasy and joy and elation of finally having this child and knowing this child is ours, the birth family is not in that same position at all. First, the birth parent, for whatever reasons, the child came into foster care and eventually was adopted, and that's generally the case, or the child was given up for adoption. The birth mother in particular suffers. Many years ago, I was part of a birth family that gave a child up for adoption. You never ever forget that child, and always there's this wonder in the back of your mind as where he or she is, what he or she looks like. It never goes away. It's a loss. Luckily for me and my family, we were reunited with my niece, and she now has two wonderful families, her adoptive family and her birth family, that love on her and her husband and her children. That's not always the case though, and even in cases of where there's drugs and neglect, the birth mother suffers loss. And I can testify to that because I have contacted and been in contact with more than one of the birth mothers of my 8 adopted children. I can tell you that the baby suffers as well as the mother. They lose the familiarity of the womb. They lose the familiarity of their mother's voice. And in fact, that was very evident with one of my children who has just turned 18. We called it womb trauma. And obviously, and at that time, I didn't understand that it was necessarily her mother's voice that she lost. I just thought it was come down effects and all sorts of nonsense like that, as well as an allergy to lactate. I mean, she's lactose intolerant. But there was way more going on than that. She suffered that loss. Loss can also show up in the early teen years. This is the years where they are claiming their identity. They're going through the hormonal changes of puberty and, the pushback that normal kids have with parents, let alone if you're adopted and you don't know where your parents are and you don't know who they are and you're trying to find your own identity. In fact, sometimes it's earlier. I recently had someone who commented on one of my Facebook posts, and he said that his six-year-old had inquired and realised loss and wondered if his birth parents missed him. Our children do become aware of their feelings, and the most important thing that we need to do is validate those feelings. We need to let them feel those feelings all the way through and not try to shove them aside. This is very critical and this is very necessary. Loss can show up as well when trying to find a birth parent, and they find either the birth parent isn't very interested, or in the case of one of my friends, he wasn't interested. Sorry. That loss is a different loss, and it's an adult loss. I also had a friend who contacted and finally found her birth mother when she was in her 40s. Unfortunately, her birth mother was of an age where she had never shared the experience of that birth. So her husband didn't know, her children didn't know. And that was very difficult for her. And she did not want to revisit that. So how do we deal with the loss and the feelings that are associated? First, always be aware that we must let our children feel their feelings through. No matter how we want to sweep it aside and pretend that the birth family isn't there, it is, and there is loss for your child. So we must validate those feelings. And we must implement the law of allowing. The law of allowing in the universe is basically unconditional love. You must have unconditional love for your child going through this and leave your feelings at the door. And you must have unconditional love for the birth parents at this point in time as well. If you'd like to talk to me about this, and I can tell you that I know this happens. It's happened in my family. With 8 adopted children, it's going to happen. And I know because I've spoken to some of the birth parents, even though our children have decided they don't want something to do with the birth parents, those birth parents suffer loss. We can be compassionate and we can be kind and we can have unconditional love in every circumstance. If this is hard for you and you don't know how to handle this, please contact me because I would love to give you a free hour plus coaching session, and you can see whether maybe you need help to get through this. I want to say bye for now and look forward to the next Adoption Talks.